There is a special kind of silence that only exists after betrayal. Not the silence of sleep, not the quiet before storm. This is the silence that settles when someone you love looks at you, really looks at you, and decides you are not enough. It's the kind of silence that has weight, the kind that presses against your chest until breathing becomes a conscious act, the kind where every eye in the room becomes a witness to your unraveling. And in that moment, standing at the front of St. Catherine's Church, beneath vaulted ceilings that had heard 1,000 vows and 1,000 promises, Elena Martinez learned what that silence sounded like. The doors were closed. The guests were seated. The late afternoon light filtered through stained glass, painting the pews in fractured reds and blues. 200 people, silk and perfume, whispers tucked behind programs, everyone waiting. She stood alone at the altar in her mother's refurbished wedding dress, lace that had been carefully mended, pearls that had been restrung by hand. She had worked overtime for 3 months to afford the alterations. Every stitch had been an act of love. And now, in front of everyone, her groom was speaking. His name was Marcus Chen, the man she had loved for 3 years, the man whose hand she had held through panic attacks and career setbacks, the man who used to call her his anchor. He stood there now, pale and trembling, his tuxedo immaculate, his voice barely above a whisper. "I thought love would be enough," he said. The microphone caught every word. But I was wrong. He didn't say the word poor. He didn't have to. It hung in the air anyway, unspoken, but understood. It lived in the way his eyes dropped to the floor, in the way his mother sat rigid in the front pew, her designer handbag clutched like a shield, in the way his best man shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to intervene or retreat. Elena's hands, which had been trembling, went still. She felt her body go numb in the way that happens when shock overrides pain, when the brain, in an act of mercy, delays the collapse. She wanted to speak, wanted to ask why now, wanted to scream that 3 months ago he had looked her in the eyes and promised that nothing mattered more than them. But her voice wouldn't come. And in that silence, something else happened. Someone shifted in their seat at the back of the church. A man. Tall, dark suit, face unreadable. No one else noticed, but Elena did, because she recognized him. And that changes everything. If you've ever been reduced to something less than you are, stay with me, because this story, it's about to turn inside out. Let's go back, not to fix this, not to rewrite it, but to understand how a woman like Elena Martinez, smart, self-sufficient, unshakable, ended up standing alone at an altar waiting for a man who had already made his choice. Because this didn't start with cruelty. It started with hope. Elena grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in East Brooklyn, where the radiators clanged all winter and the summer heat made sleep impossible. Her mother cleaned office buildings at night. Her father worked double shifts at a warehouse until his back gave out when Elena was 12. They were poor, but they were not broken. Her mother taught her one lesson above all others: never let anyone make you feel small, and never owe more than you can pay back. So Elena learned control early. Control over her wants, control over her expectations, control over the narrative people tried to assign to her. She worked her way through college, state school, full ride, double major in communications and finance. She graduated summa cum laude with 0 debt and a job offer in a mid-tier consulting firm. She didn't want luxury. She wanted stability. The kind of life where an unexpected bill didn't trigger a panic attack, where she could help her mother retire, where she didn't have to count quarters before buying groceries. She wanted enough. And when she met Marcus Chen at a networking event 3 years ago, she thought she'd found someone who understood that. Marcus was charming in an unpolished way, ambitious but insecure, driven but anxious. He worked in finance, came from money, but always seemed like he was trying to prove something. To his parents, to his peers, to himself. Elena grounded him. When he spiraled over a bad quarter, she reminded him that worth wasn't measured in portfolio performance. When his mother made passive-aggressive comments about appropriate partners, Elena stayed calm, polite, untouchable. She loved him, and he loved her, or so she thought. But love, she would learn, is not the same as commitment, and commitment, when tested, reveals what someone truly values. The first warning sign came 6 months into their relationship. They were at dinner, nothing fancy, just Thai takeout in his apartment, and Marcus made a joke. "You know, my mom asked if you came for money." He laughed. Elena didn't. "What did you tell her?" He hesitated. "I told her it didn't matter." "But you didn't say no." "Elena, it's fine," she said, even though it wasn't. He apologized, said he was awkward, said he didn't mean it that way. And she believed him, because love at that stage is about belief. The second warning sign came a year later, when his college friend got engaged to a venture capitalist's daughter. The wedding was in the Hamptons. The registry was at Bergdorf's. Marcus didn't say anything, but Elena saw the way he looked at the photos, the way he measured his life against someone else's highlight reel. "We don't need that," she said quietly. "I know," he replied, but his voice sounded far away. By the time he proposed, Elena had learned to navigate the space between who Marcus wanted to be and who he was afraid he'd become. She said yes, not because the ring was big. It wasn't. Not because the proposal was grand. It wasn't. But because she believed that love, real love, could withstand pressure. She believed they were stronger than his fear. She believed. And that belief, the kind that makes you ignore the small cracks, the tiny inconsistencies, the moments when someone shows you exactly who they are, that belief carried her all the way to the altar. But belief, no matter how fierce, cannot survive when the other person stops fighting for it. The question is, when did he stop fighting? And more importantly, when did she realize it? Engagement, they say, is supposed to be joyful, a celebration, a countdown to forever. But for Elena and Marcus, engagement became an audit of her, of them, of whether love was enough to justify what they were about to do. Planning the wedding became a minefield. Marcus wanted something nice, not extravagant, but respectable, something his family could post about without embarrassment. Elena suggested a small ceremony, immediate family, a restaurant reception. That's not a wedding, that's a dinner party. His mother said that. Marcus didn't defend her. He just looked uncomfortable. So Elena compromised. She always compromised. They settled on St. Catherine's, a beautiful church, yes, but affordable. A modest reception hall, a DJ instead of a band, flowers from a local shop instead of a high-end florist. She handled most of the logistics herself, coordinating between her full-time job and the wedding. Marcus helped when he could, but increasingly he seemed distracted, distant. The breaking point came 6 weeks before the wedding. They were at his parents' house for dinner. His mother, Victoria, was holding court as usual, talking about a colleague's daughter who had just married a neurosurgeon. "They honeymooned in Santorini," Victoria said, smiling tightly. "Such a lovely couple." Elena felt Marcus tense beside her. "We're thinking about a weekend in Vermont," he said quietly. Victoria's smile didn't falter. "How quaint." Elena set down her fork. "We're prioritizing paying off student loans," she said calmly. "A honeymoon can wait." "Student loans?" Victoria repeated, as if the phrase were foreign. "Marcus, darling, I thought your firm covered those." "They don't," Elena said. "Oh, well, I suppose everyone has different priorities." That night, in the car, Marcus didn't speak. Elena tried. "Your mom doesn't have to approve of everything we do." "I know." "Then why does it feel like you're ashamed of me?" I'm not. You didn't defend me, Marcus." He pulled over, turned off the engine, and for the first time he said the quiet part out loud. "I love you, Elena. I do, but I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of not being enough, of you resenting me because I can't give you the life you deserve, of my family always looking at us like we are less. I don't need more. I just need you. But what if I need more? He said. And there it was, the truth he'd been avoiding. He didn't fear poverty. He feared being associated with it. Elena should have walked away then, should have recognized that his fear was louder than his love. But she didn't, because she had spent 3 years teaching herself to believe in him. And belief, once rooted, is hard to kill. So she made a choice. She chose hope. She told herself that weddings were stressful, that family pressure was real, that once they were married, once they were them again, it would be okay. She chose to stay. Fear doesn't scream, it whispers, until the day it decides for you. But Elena's story wasn't happening in a vacuum, because while she was planning a wedding and managing Marcus's anxiety and trying to hold together a relationship that was quietly unraveling, there was someone else watching. Someone who saw her differently, not as a problem to solve, not as a risk to manage, but as a person worth paying attention to. His name was Daniel Harrington, and he was the last person anyone would expect to care. Daniel Harrington was a billionaire in the most boring, methodical sense. No flashy cars, no yacht parties, no tabloid scandals. He had built his wealth through private equity, buying struggling companies, turning them around, and selling them for profit. It was brutal, efficient, and utterly devoid of sentimentality. He was 42, widowed at 36, no children, no pets, no hobbies that didn't involve Excel spreadsheets or conference calls. People who worked for him respected him. No one knew him, and that's exactly how he wanted it. Elena had been working as a senior analyst at Harrington Capital for 2 years. She was good, quietly excellent in the way that people who've had to fight for everything tend to be. She didn't demand attention, didn't play politics, just did the work, thoroughly, intelligently, without drama. Daniel noticed, not in a romantic way, not at first, but in the way you notice someone who doesn't need external validation to know their worth. There was one moment that shifted something. A quarterly review meeting, high stakes, a deal on the line worth $200 million. One of the senior partners was pushing a risky acquisition, loud, confident, dismissive of concerns. Elena, the only woman in the room, raised her hand. "The debt-to-equity ratio doesn't support this timeline," she said calmly. The partner laughed. "We've factored that in." "Have you factored in the upcoming regulatory changes? Because if those pass, this deal collapses in 6 months." Silence. Daniel leaned forward. "Explain." She did, methodically, clearly. The deal was pulled. The partner was furious. Daniel made a mental note. She just saved us $50 million, and she didn't gloat. Weeks later, he called her into his office. "You were right," he said. "I know." He almost smiled. Almost. "You don't need my approval, do you?" "No, sir." "Good. Don't start." And that was it. But something had shifted. He started noticing her in meetings, the way she listened before speaking, the way she asked the questions no one else thought to ask. And one day, when a colleague made a dismissive comment about her not understanding how things work at this level, Daniel intervened. "She understands better than most of you," he said coldly. The room went silent. Later, Elena stopped by his office. "You didn't have to do that." "I know." She hesitated. "Thank you." He nodded. And then, because he was a man who had spent 6 years avoiding anything that felt like attachment, he pulled back, stopped engaging beyond what was necessary, stopped noticing, or tried to. When the invitation arrived, Daniel stared at it for a long time. "Elena Martinez and Marcus Chen request the honor of your presence." He didn't know Marcus, didn't care to, but he knew Elena, and he knew in the way that people who've been broken know that this wedding was a mistake. He almost didn't go. Almost. On the wedding day, he sat in the back of the church, and he told himself it wasn't his place to interfere. But some silences demand a response. The day of the wedding, Elena woke up at 5 a.m., not because she couldn't sleep, but because she had stopped trying. She lay in the pre-dawn stillness of her childhood bedroom. Her mother had insisted she stay the night before, tradition and all, and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in the last 72 hours, a question had planted itself in her mind. Not, do I love him, but does he love me enough? And she hated herself for asking it. Her mother helped her into the dress, the same lace her mother had worn, the same pearls. "You look beautiful, mija," her mother whispered, eyes shining. Elena tried to smile. "Mama, what if I'm making a mistake?" Her mother paused, hands still on the zipper. "Then you walk away." "Everyone's already here." "So?" "I can't humiliate him." Her mother turned her around, looked her in the eyes. "What about humiliating yourself?" But Elena didn't walk away. She got in the car. She arrived at the church. She stood in the bridal suite, bouquet in hand, and told herself that love was worth fighting for, even when you were the only one fighting. The music started, the doors opened, and she walked, alone. Her father had passed years ago. She had no one to give her away, a phrase she'd always hated anyway. She walked herself down that aisle, head high, shoulders back, every step an act of will. Marcus was waiting at the altar, but he wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the floor. The officiant began. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." And then Marcus interrupted. "Wait." The church went silent. I need to say something." Elena's heart stopped. "I thought love would be enough," Marcus said, voice shaking. "I really did, but I've been lying to myself and I've been lying to you." She felt the ground tilt beneath her. "I can't spend my life feeling inadequate," he continued. "I can't be the man who disappoints his family, who doesn't measure up. I thought I could, but I can't." No shouting, no theatrics, just honesty. The kind that destroys you softly. Elena stood there, 200 people watching, waiting for her to cry, to beg, to collapse. But she didn't. She lifted her chin and said nothing. Because what was there to say? He had made his choice. And in that moment, so did she. She chose dignity. The room was unbearable, whispers rising like static. Marcus's mother looked relieved. His best man looked horrified. And then, a chair scraped. Someone stood at the back of the church. Daniel Harrington, tall, calm, expression unreadable. He didn't shout, didn't rush forward. He just stood and spoke. "She is not poor," his voice carried. "She is unsupported." Silence, complete, suffocating. There is a difference between lacking wealth and lacking worth, and the fact that you've confused the two says everything about you and nothing about her. Marcus stared. Victoria Chen's face went white. Elena's breath caught. Dania's eyes met hers. You deserve better than someone who measures love in currency. And then, Elena turned to him. Not grateful, not rescued, angry. "I don't need saving," she said, voice steady. The room held its breath. Daniel didn't flinch. "I know," he said quietly. "That's why I stood up. Because this is the moment. Not when he speaks for her, but when she speaks for herself. And he listens. What happens after the world watches you fall apart? You rebuild. Quietly, carefully. And you decide what kind of person you're going to be on the other side. Elena left the church that day, not with Daniel, not with anyone. She walked out alone, climbed into her mother's car, and sat in silence all the way home. The media found the story within hours. Billionaire defends jilted bride in shocking wedding scandal. Her phone exploded. Friends, acquaintances, reporters. She turned it off. For 3 days, she didn't leave her mother's apartment. She cried, she raged, she slept 14 hours and woke up angrier than before. And then, On the fourth day, she got up, showered, made coffee, and went back to work. Daniel didn't reach out, not immediately. He knew better. But when she walked into the office the following Monday, he was waiting. Not in her workspace, not publicly. A note on her desk. You have nothing to apologize for. Take whatever time you need. D.H. She kept the note. Weeks passed. The gossip faded. Marcus sent an email. She deleted it without reading. His mother sent flowers. Elena donated them to a hospice. And slowly, she remembered who she was. Before him, before the wedding, before she started shrinking to fit someone else's fear. It was Daniel who broke the silence. Not with flowers, not with some grand gesture, with a question. He found her in the break room, late one evening, staring at cold coffee. "Are you okay?" he asked. She looked at him. "No." "Good." She blinked. "Good." People who are okay after betrayal are lying to themselves. She almost laughed. "You're not great at comforting people, are you?" "No," he admitted, "but I'm good at listening." They talked. Not about Marcus, not about the wedding. About work, about markets, about nothing and everything. And somewhere in those conversations, something grew. Slowly, cautiously, because both of them had been broken by love before, and neither was willing to rush into it again. Months later, Daniel asked her to dinner. "As colleagues?" she asked. "No." "Then as what?" "As two people who might be worth each other's time." She considered. "I'm not looking to be saved." "I'm not offering salvation," he replied. "Just company." She went. They were careful. No public displays, no rushing. They talked, they argued, they challenged each other. He didn't fix her. She didn't complete him. They just existed together, with space for both to be whole. A year later, in a quiet park where no one was watching, Daniel asked her a question. "If you choose me, it won't be because I stood up for you at a wedding. It will be because you want to stand beside me, fully, without reservation." Elena looked at him. "And if I say yes? Then I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it." She smiled. "That's a lot of pressure." "You've handled worse." She had. And so she said yes. This story isn't about being rescued. It's about refusing to disappear when someone decides you're not enough. It's about standing at an altar, or in a boardroom, or in your own life, and choosing yourself when no one else will. Elena didn't need a billionaire to prove her worth. She needed to remember it herself. And when she did, everything else followed. Love without dignity fails. Money reveals fear. And real love, the kind worth having, recognizes worth before it's convenient. So here's my question for you. Would you have stayed? Would you have walked away sooner? And when the moment came, when someone stood up for you, would you have let them? Or would you have stood up for yourself first? Because the real twist isn't that someone saved her. It's that she didn't need saving at all. She just needed to be seen. If this story moved you, subscribe. If it challenged you, comment below. And if it stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because stories like this, they're not just entertainment. They're reminders that your worth isn't up for negotiation. Not at an altar, not anywhere.